It's good to be Janu Yaoi. So hey, it's Romania Black, and I'm celebrating Janu Yaoi this month. I'm doing 3 different OVA reactions, and then doing a mangaka spotlight. And you know what else makes it even better? Death Wish 1810. Thank you, or Death Wisher. I'll have your official moniker right up here, but thank you so much. This person on Twitter sent me a message a few days ago and was like, hey, here's the link to the English translation for chapter 46 of Twittering Birds Never Fly. And I was like, ah! Like the angels sang, the choirs came down, because I have been patiently for over 2.5 months waiting for this English translation for this chapter to come out. Waiting patiently, which the last chapter was like 100 pages. It was enormous. It was a gigantic mammoth of a chapter, making up for 2 chapters because Yoneda Kou had been sick the month prior. And so this one is just going to be 37 pages, a very reasonable chapter length. But I have been patiently waiting for chapter 46, and it's finally here. And so I decided to get a little bit dressed up. I'm like, it's still Janu Yaoi, so just consider this like a little bonus of Yaoi content. But God, I love Twittering Birds, and I've missed it. The 3rd installment for Janu Yaoi was the last entry that I watched that is BL or Yaoi related, and after that madness, I need some Yoneda Kou. And so where we last left off with our dear Yashiro and Doumeki is that our dear Yashiro was about to go off with that stupid, low-life, slimy cop detective, was going to go off with him. He won't admit that he likes Doumeki. It's been 4 years since they've seen each other. They have beef between the two of them. They just need to talk it out, but neither of them really want to do that. And so Yashiro just thought he'd run away. He'd just run away with the detective and get away from his problems. And Doumeki, who has, people call him Dark Meki on the fandom, and he's definitely a lot more assertive than he once was. I'm kind of torn about it, because on the one hand, I like that Doumeki is not a lost puppy anymore. He's not just following behind Yashiro blindly. He is making his own decisions, and he's not Yashiro's subordinate anymore, so he's not tied down to Yashiro, and he's not like subservient to him. But on the other end of the spectrum, I don't want Doumeki to lose what makes him so great, which is like his charm and his purity, and I don't want him to lose that. And so like his unconditional love for Yashiro, which I still think he has, but I'm very curious. I'm like, okay, you've stopped Yashiro from going off with the detective. What are we going to do now? Because here's the problem. Doumeki thinks that Yashiro is as promiscuous as he was before he basically broke up and left Doumeki. But the truth of the matter is, Yashiro isn't. The detective is literally the only one he does anything with, and the only reason why he does stuff with the detective is because he gives him favors and keeps him out of trouble. So it's like, But yeah, I did not get a glass of wine tonight. It's actually freezing cold. We just had like a blizzard outside. So I've got my Sosuke blanket in my lap, and I've got hot tea because I'm like, it's too cold for this nonsense. But you know what'll spice things up for Janu Yaoi? Twittering Birds. So yeah, we're going to look at chapter 46 here. I'm so excited. I've waited so long. The new chapter's supposed to come out this month, but it'll probably be another month before it's translated in English. Like you do. Which, granted, when you have this many pages, it makes sense why it takes a long time, right? But in any case, we are going to look at the reaction for chapter 46 here. Thank y'all for reading along with me, but we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Damn. That chapter was so much shorter than the last. So much shorter. Oh, this chapter was heartbreaking. No. Communication. Kou. Here's the thing. Yoneda has given us chapters like this in the past. It's just, the problem with waiting on volume 8 to come out is that it's going to be like another year. So I've been reading these chapters to chapter. So when you see it in the full volume, it will probably have a different context, right? But damn it. That's so frustrating. It's so frustrating because Doumeki thinks that Yashiro hasn't changed, but he clearly has. Yashiro has the hots for Doumeki. He wants Doumeki, but he doesn't want to admit it because that would be admitting that he made a mistake because he drove Doumeki away. Yashiro, I love him, but he's so frustrating because he drove Doumeki away. He shot the man. He drove him away, but he loves him and he doesn't want to admit it. And so it's like Kageyama, after he drove him away, Kageyama's like, you love him, you know that, right? And Yashiro was like, well, I'm the last person to figure this out. So it's so frustrating because he clearly doesn't want, he's having all these fantasies, like the fantasies of them making out and everything. But it's funny, Doumeki is convinced that Yashiro hasn't changed, but he has. And Yashiro is convinced that Doumeki's changed too much. But it's so awful because Doumeki loves him, but he's so mad at him right now. And he's just like, everything's just convenient for you, and you just do. He's calling Yashiro out on all his bullshit is what he's doing. And he says the fact that you haven't changed a bit irritates me. It's like, but Yashiro has changed. He just doesn't want to vocalize it. He doesn't want to admit it, right? And Doumeki, he has the right to be frustrated because he loves Yashiro, and Yashiro just throwing himself out there to these other people, it is frustrating for him. But then there's the line about him having a woman, right? And I'm sorry, but Doumeki, regardless of how I feel about him in this chapter, him taking that glove off and Yashiro being like, what are we doing? Like, my dude. And yeah, he's different from before. And so Yashiro, of course, is jealous because he's like, over something as simple as this, is this some kind of joke? Because he basically, he gets off just in that moment instantly, just thinking about it. And the fact that Doumeki has experience now, because it's been 4 years. I mean, Yashiro, he says, a woman, you have one, right? Now the question is, when Doumeki says, indeed, how astute of you to notice, then is Doumeki lying? Does he actually have a woman that he's with? I mean, it would, I guess, make sense, but Doumeki's always had eyes. Or is he lying to Yashiro? Is he lying to Yashiro too? I don't know. Or he's been following Yashiro around, so if he thought Yashiro hadn't changed at all, maybe he did start seeing a woman. But he's wanted to be with Yashiro. But Doumeki, he's like, Doumeki's like, I tried to be this soft lover, thinking that was the genuine way to do it, but you hated it. So he's like, I'm trying to be now like all these other people that you screw, thinking that maybe that will satisfy you. Maybe if I'm like all the others, you'll be able to be happy about it. And Yashiro's like, no. Yashiro just doesn't want to admit that he liked Doumeki the way he was. And now that he's trying to be something he's not, it's frustrating. Very frustrating indeed. So frustrating. Ugh. And Yashiro's like, I just want you to go if you're not going to be... It's like they both want to be exclusive to each other, but they both think that neither is exclusive to each other, so it's frustrating. Yeah. Should I tie you up? That's the way you like it, right? Man, that's just... And then he tells that it's enough. And there's this moment where Doumeki wants to touch him. He wants to touch his back. He wants to put his hand on him. And he doesn't do it. Because he doesn't... It's almost like Doumeki doesn't want to hurt himself anymore. He's like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt myself anymore by getting too attached to you. But it's so funny. The tables are turning. He's like, while you're working with our group, you're not going to do any other guys but me. And I'm like, oh, really? We're going to have this now. And Yashiro's like, excuse me? And Doumeki calls him out. He's like, you were about to pass intel on to Inami, or were you just meeting him to have sex with him? And Yashiro's like, no, that's none of your business. And he's like, well, it kind of is. He's like, I don't work for you now. We're working as a partnership, and if you're giving intel without telling us, that's a problem. So he's like, it's a serious concern for us. You may think it's trivial, but it's serious for us. So as long as you are working with us, then you're going to play by our rules, meaning his rules. So it's a power shift, like the dynamic of Yashiro being the boss of Doumeki. Doumeki's not the boss of Yashiro now, but there's definitely a shift in power where Doumeki is on equal footing with Yashiro, and he's like, no, this is not going to work how you think it is. And it's so sad. There's a moment where Yoneda puts that little trimmer to Yashiro's hand when he has it to his mouth, where he's like, Like, he's just, you can tell he's so frustrated. And then he says, ain't this funny? That, yeah, things are just, you know, so different than before. I just want them to be together, Yoneda Kou. I just want them to be together. And I know Yoneda is going to give us that eventually, but she's going to make us suffer first. That's the one thing about this series. It is not a fan... It's not fan servicey. When you start this series, you're like, oh, they're going to have sex all the time. It's going to be fan servicey. No. There's going to be moments like this, but it's going to be hard. And, no pun intended, and she's going to make you work for it. She's like, this relationship is not just going to be easy peasy. It never was. And she's bringing about all the harsh realities of it. But so the next chapter comes out on January 30th, which probably means it'll be March before it's translated into English. Funny that, but oh man, I'm so excited to see what happens in the next chapter. I really am. The wait is killer for this, but it's worth it. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of this chapter. And what you think of Doumeki. I love Doumeki. I do. I don't like him. I want him and Yashiro to talk to each other. Yashiro's too stubborn right now. He's too stubborn to talk about it. And Doumeki has the wrong impression. And everything sucks and is painful. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. Enjoy the rest of Janu Yowie. And in the meantime, I'll be back hopefully soon with more Twittering Birds Never Fly. Bye.